American Rescue Plan. What President Joe Biden wants you to know about his first big government spending program. Social media ban. How Facebook seeks to silence former President Donald Trump. House leadership. Republican representatives consider who is out and who's in. And Vatican ambassador. The Holy See marks 50 years of collaboration with the European Union. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, May 5th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Joe Biden updates the U.S. on the American Rescue Plan. That is the plan that passed earlier this year, sending $1,400 checks to most Americans. It is also the same plan, critics said, did nothing to protect the unborn from abortion. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan paid for vaccines. It raised the child tax credit, sent billions of dollars to local schools and governments, but it left out critical, all-important Hyde Amendment protections which prevent taxpayer dollars from paying for abortions.
It's providing checks in pockets and shots in arms.
President Joe Biden says his American Rescue Plan is working.
It's also providing rental assistance to keep people from being evicted from their homes. It's making health care more affordable.
Congress signed off on it just weeks ago. Democrats claimed it would fight the pandemic and help the economy regain its footing.
And the message is clear. Help is here.
Before his speech and on this Cinco de Mayo, President Biden stopped by a Mexican restaurant in Washington, D.C., helped by the Restaurant Revitalization Fund.
Did you guys order anything?
Like so many restaurants, its staff was decimated, going from 55 down to 7. The American Rescue Plan was also heavily criticized by Catholic leaders over its lack of pro-life protections, which would normally be covered under the Hyde Amendment, preventing taxpayer dollars from paying for abortions. Still, the rescue plan is now the law of the land.
We're going to make permanent this incredible and historic effort to feed kids during the summer months.
Meanwhile, the Secretary of Agriculture made an appearance at the daily press briefing. The topic, making sure kids are getting the nutrition they need to grow up healthy.
Now we have the opportunity to provide each one of these families with a card that looks like this. This is the summer EBT card.
And on the COVID front, cases are down, and deaths are down as well, to a new low of 400. Also today, this promise from the COVID-19 response team.
We're going to make it as easy as possible for every American to get a vaccine.
The COVID-19 response team says, for instance, in making things easier, you can just take out your phone, text your zip code to 438-829. That's 438-829. You'll get a list of places near you where you can get vaccinated. You can also go to vaccines.gov. By the way, there are many no-appointment walk-in vaccinations available. Just check with your local pharmacy. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
A Facebook oversight board rules that former President Donald Trump's account remains suspended, but the decision leaves many questions wide open.
There is a role for government here, I think, because these problems cannot be wholly solved by private entities and whatever oversight boards or other kinds of pseudo accountability mechanisms they put into place.
Facebook's board said it was not acceptable to indefinitely suspend the former president. They want clearer standards within 6 months. And coming up later in the newscast, we'll have analysis from Ian Pryor of the Internet Accountability Project. Well, on Capitol Hill, a battle is brewing inside Republican Party leadership. Congresswoman Liz Cheney is under fire from fellow Republicans for refusing to back former President Donald Trump's claims that the presidential election was stolen. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
The issue has become red hot after GOP leader Kevin McCarthy was heard on an open mic stating that he's lost confidence in the Congresswoman from Wyoming.
I think she's got real problems. I've had it with her. It's, I've lost confidence.
That audio obtained by Axios comes just 24 hours after Congresswoman Cheney blasted former President Donald Trump, firing back through Twitter at Mr. Trump's statement calling the election fraudulent. Representative Cheney, who is third in charge in the House, tweeted, quote, "The 2020 presidential election was not stolen. Anyone who claims it was is spreading the big lie, turning their back on the rule of law and poisoning our democratic system." It's not the first time the Congresswoman has taken on the former president. She was the highest-ranking Republican who voted to impeach, accusing the former president of promoting the Capitol riot. She has faced backlash for it, but Senator Mitt Romney, who also voted to convict the former president, did tweet, quote, "Liz Cheney refuses to lie. As one of my Republican Senate colleagues said to me following my impeachment vote, I wouldn't want to be a member of a group that punished someone for following their conscience. The jockeying to replace the Congresswoman is already taking place. Sources tell me Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York wants it. A spokesperson for House Minority Whip Steve Scalise tells me, quote, House Republicans need to be solely focused on taking back the House in 2022 and fighting against Speaker Pelosi and President Biden's radical socialist agenda. And Elise Stefanik is strongly committed to doing that, which is why Whip Scalise has pledged to support her for conference chair. I'm hearing that a vote to remove and replace Congresswoman Cheney could happen as soon as next week when the House comes back from recess. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Authorities in Los Angeles have charged a man with arson for last July's fire, which gutted a historic Catholic church. The San Gabriel mission was established by St. Junipero Serra. It was closed for renovations ahead of its 250th anniversary, sparing its stored artifacts. No one was hurt in that fire. 57-year-old John David Corey faces multiple felony counts. A new surge of coronavirus cases in Bangkok has Thailand's government rushing to vaccinate thousands. The country is in its third surge since the start of the pandemic. The most recent spike has seen more than 2,000 cases a day, often with dozens of deaths. The greatest concern now is for the poor in Bangkok's largest slum. Mexico's Catholic bishops are encouraging prayer for the victims and families from Monday's metro accident.
Para mí era un amor, para mí era todo.
Gisela Riojo expresses her emotions of hurt and anger as her husband was one of the 25 people who died from the collapsed bridge. Bishop Pena, where the accident occurred, says, "My most fervent prayer rises up for the people who have suffered this accident." Colombia's finance minister has resigned following 5 days of protest in Bogota over a tax reform proposal. At least 17 people have died. The government wanted to raise $6.7 billion as Colombia struggles both to pay debts and help its poor. Israel's president has given Yair Lapid a mandate to form a new government. President Rivlin made the announcement today after a midnight deadline expired for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to form a new government. Nationally known journalist Yair Lapid now has 4 weeks to negotiate a 61-seat majority. Foreign ministers for the G7 continued their second day of face-to-face meetings in London today. They accused China of human rights abuses and economic bullying, but they offered no specifics to address Beijing's increasing global assertiveness. The Vatican is celebrating 50 years of its relationship between the European Union and the Holy See. A Holy See representative, also known as nuncio, was assigned for the first time to the European Union in 1970. In 2006, the EU decided to delegate its first ambassador to the Holy See. Joining us now from Rome is Alexandra Valkenburg, EU Ambassador to the Holy See. Madam Ambassador, thank you so much for your time today. Tell us about the celebrations for the 50-year anniversary and some of the important projects that you've worked on with the Vatican during that time.
Yes, indeed, as you say, we're celebrating 50 years of diplomatic relations between the EU and the Holy See. And we'll do that with the launch of an EU Churches Walkway that we will launch this Sunday, which is actually Europe Day, the day that Robert Schuman, 71 years ago, pronounced his famous speech on the future of Europe. So together with all the embassies from the different member states here in Rome accredited to the Holy See, we set up an EU Churches Walkway, showcasing a bit, well, the strong ties we have, obviously, with the Holy See, also the diversity of our history, the links that all the different countries have with specific churches here, here in Rome. So it's really a way that we want to show our strong links and at the same time show the diversity and beauty of the history that we have together.
And what sort of work does your embassy do with the Holy See overall? Are there any upcoming projects that you'd like to highlight?
Yes, well, we work with them obviously on a broad range of issues. I think it's important to highlight that we have a lot of values in common, and we work on that in our diplomatic relations. We exchange views, how we can support strong multilateralism, how we can promote peace and stability around the world, human rights. Climate change is, I think, an item very high on the agenda of both Pope Francis and the EU, with the EU Green Deal that we have launched. So we really look to cooperate together to promote all the work that needs to be done on climate change around the world. And then more recently on COVID-19, I think we have a joint agenda of promoting that it's really about not just taking care of ourselves, but it's also about taking care of the others. We have to not only vaccinate here in Europe, but we're all of us not safe if we do not also help every country around the world to make sure that they can vaccinate their people. So there we have a really strong agenda that we work on together.
And can you tell us about your role specifically as ambassador? I know it's unique because you're an ambassador not of one country, but of 27.
Yes, well, I represent the EU as a whole. So the EU institutions, but yes, in principle also the whole group of member states. I coordinate regularly with them. We organize joint meetings with counterparts of the Holy See to have discussions on all those different topics that I mentioned. And yes, indeed, it's very special not maybe to represent one country, but to represent this very strong organization that the EU is, and yeah, the cooperation that I strongly believe in. To be able to represent that here is really a big honor.
Well, Madam Ambassador, we appreciate you coming on today. We're really grateful. Thank you so much. Alexandra Volkenberg, EU Ambassador to the Holy See. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Coming up, the latest between Facebook and former President Donald Trump. As we reported earlier, Facebook's oversight board refused to lift the ban on former President Donald Trump's account, and that decision is raising a lot of questions. Joining us now is Ian Pryor, Senior Counsel and Spokesman for the Internet Accountability Project. Ian, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, your reaction to the decision by Facebook's oversight board, and what do you think this signals when it comes to free speech?
Well, it's not surprising, but it is appalling. We are looking at a very new era where these big tech behemoths, big tech robber barons actually, really control the way in which we're able to speak. So this isn't the 20th century where you go out and you speak on the town square or even on television or on the radio. Now people are doing their expression and exercising their right to express themselves on these social media platforms. And so when you have the former president of the United States being banned from that platform and other platforms, it is a serious threat to our First Amendment rights. Now, I understand that these are private companies that operate outside of the bounds of the Constitution, but for all intents and purposes, what they are doing is running the country basically through their censorship, and they've basically become a common carrier and need to be broken up via antitrust action.
Yeah, and a lot of critics are saying, too, this decision is really kind of a sideshow to larger issues regarding the social media giants' content moderation. And some have said, Facebook and Google and Twitter have these kind of sort of different standards when it comes to conservative voices. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's obvious. I mean, look at, what they do to conservatives on there. They're very quick to suspend them, to ban them, to, mark different content from conservatives as, they fact check it. But when the left does it, there's no such censorship. So what you have here are these massive, really common carriers out there that are censoring one side of the political ideological spectrum. And that is entirely something that is dangerous for this country, for the long-term First Amendment rights of citizens that want to participate in this, because there really is nowhere else for them to go to have these kind of discussions, to express themselves. So, I mean, I think the question, as Senator Mike Lee put it, who made Facebook and Twitter and these other platforms the gatekeeper of ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up breaking them up, talking about that. It's been an issue for a long time. Do you think this sort of brings it up to light again in these recent developments?
Well, I certainly think that this is, top news right now. You're seeing Democrats and Republicans really panning it, though for different reasons. This is a bipartisan issue in Washington, right? I mean, you have Congressman Ken Buck, Congressman David Cicilline working together on this issue. This is not something that is just a Republican versus Democrat thing. This is really important for the future of our country, where you have these big tech robber barons that are out there controlling what can be said in the public forum that was built here in America. And, if we don't do something about that soon, you're going to have really sort of an Orwellian situation where these companies get to call the shots on what is and what is not appropriate speech in America. And that is a far cry from where we should be.
We have probably less than a minute left, but I really want to ask you this question. I know you used to work for President Trump's administration. How do you think this is going to impact him, if really at all? And also, what can you tell us about his plans to have a presence on social media? What do you know?
Well, what I know is what I saw, and it's an interesting and creative way to do that, to basically create his own social media channel that allows people to push that stuff out by themselves on Facebook and Twitter. So I think there's going to be millions of people that do that because they are still following what he says. As far as, the future, I think that if anyone's going to be able to figure out how to get his message and his voice to the people into the social media ecosystem, it's President Trump. And I think that, what he announced the other day is a good start towards that.
All right, Ian, we have to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time today. Ian Pryor, Senior Counsel and Spokesman for the Internet Accountability Project. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, pro-life protections. More states seek to save unborn babies, where the fight for life stands tonight. And deepening your prayer life. Pope Francis speaks about the power of silent prayer. Republican lawmakers in North Carolina have advanced a proposal to make it illegal to perform an abortion based on a diagnosis of Down syndrome. Pro-abortion groups say the measure interferes with a woman's right to end her pregnancy. A handful of states have passed similar laws regarding Down syndrome diagnosis. Many of those plans are facing legal challenges. The proposal in North Carolina is one of several pro-life measures being considered on the state level. One study says proposals to protect the unborn have been introduced in 46 states. Joining us now is Cathie Hedrow, host and managing editor of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Catherine, great to see you. Thank you so much for your time today. Catherine, what's your impression of the North Carolina bill and about the larger trend of pro-life activism and success at the state level, and also why that is so important considering the pro-abortion stance coming from the Biden administration?
Absolutely. Well, it's great to see you, Tracy. This North Carolina bill is great news, and frankly, it's common sense. No one should be discriminated against over their race or over their ability or disability, including our unborn. So hopefully we'll see this signed into law. And as you mentioned, there's been a lot to celebrate when it comes to pro-life efforts at the state level. You cited a study. So last week, the Guttmacher Institute, which is a pro-abortion research group, found that over 530 pro-life bills have been introduced at the state level this year alone. 61 have been enacted into law. Abortion advocates are calling this a disastrous year when it comes to the state level, which means we in the pro-life movement are celebrating. And I do think this is in large part a response to what we're seeing here in Washington, D.C. We have a pro-abortion president and we have a pro-abortion majority in Congress. I don't think we are expecting to see a lot of pro-life strides on Capitol Hill. So it really is up to the states to stand strong and put into place pro-life protections.
Catherine, what role are pro-life governors playing in leading this legislation? What more can you tell us about that?
I will say pro-life governors are really having a moment right now. We're seeing a lot of governors really step up to the task and put into place great pro-life laws. For example, last week, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey signed a bill into law that's similar to this North Carolina bill. It is a discriminatory abortion ban. And also last week, Montana Governor Greg Gianforte signed 3 landmark pro-life bills into law. Those bills ban late-term abortion, put safeguards in place for chemical abortions, and require an ultrasound ahead of an abortion. I spoke with Governor Gianforte this week for EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, and Tracy, he told me this was a priority for him when he came into the governor's office in January. This pro-life issue and these pro-life bills were a priority for him, and he, as governor, has a greater ability to advance the pro-life cause, more so than when he did when he was in Capitol Hill and in Congress, because after all, governors are the chief executives of their state.
Yeah, I want to switch gears just a little bit here. We've been following Archbishop Salvador Corleone's pastoral letter saying Catholics who support abortion should not present themselves for Holy Communion. Do you suspect that we'll continue to see similar action from more bishops?
That was a beautiful and powerful letter, and this really is the big conversation happening right now in the Catholic Church in the United States. And I do think we'll continue to see more bishops put out statements and comment on the sacredness of the Holy Eucharist. As you've reported, we are expecting the U.S. bishops to vote this summer on whether to put out a statement on Eucharistic coherence, on this idea of our unworthiness or worthiness to receive Holy Eucharist. And really, this conversation escalated following the inauguration of President Joe Biden. He is, as we've been saying, the second Catholic president, but advances an abortion agenda that contradicts the Catholic Church's teachings on life. That causes confusion and scandal, and the Catholic faithful are really demanding clarity from the U.S. bishops on this topic. Relatedly, I also spoke this week with Bishop Joseph Cathie. He has publicly stated he is committed to praying every single day for President Joe Biden, that he is a conversion on the life issue. And Tracy, I just think that's a great reminder for us all that conversion is possible, and we should all be praying every single day for our president.
Absolutely, Catherine. I definitely agree with that. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming on. Wish we had more time to talk. Catherine Hedrow, host and managing editor of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Thanks again, Catherine.
Thank you.
A pro-life sister urges Catholics to be battle ready to defend family and faith. Sister Deidre Byrne addressed this message to an international pro-life conference last week. Her community is engaged in our nation's capital to reverse the effects of the abortion pill. And learn more about Sister Deidre Byrne at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Pope Francis is scheduled to issue an apostolic letter on the ministry of being a catechist. The letter will formally establish the catechist's role in the church for lay members who are called to evangelize. Further details will be presented next week. Well, the Pope's prayer intention for the month of May is for the world of finance.
Mientras la economía real, la que crea trabajo.
The Holy Father said due to the pandemic, the economy is in crisis and many are without jobs. He urges those involved in global finances to use economy as a form of service for the common good. And finally tonight, Pope Francis says contemplative prayer is a silent dialogue of love with Jesus Christ.
Io guardo lui e lui guarda me.
At the Holy Father's weekly talk, Pope Francis said gazing at the Lord is enough to understand how much God loves us. The Pope said silent prayer is our first step towards a relationship with Jesus. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.